Welcome everyone to MailFuzz TV. I am Peter and today I'm going to be talking about Unreal Season 2 Episode 10. It's called Friendly Fire. It's the season finale. Spoilers of course, as always, and this is a Patreon sponsored review, so thank you very much to Born Now for making the pick. So this is a big ending to the season, and not necessarily doing the things I was expecting. Weirdly, it kind of repeated something that the last season did as well. Not in like concept or idea, but just in structure. And that was last season. I specifically remember feeling that they ended episode 9 with the big tease of Rachel running away with Adam, and it was kind of dealt with by the title of the finale, right? I expected that to be the plot of the finale, and it was done with in the opening scene. Something very similar happens here with this episode, and that the last episode set up the cliffhanger of Coleman and Yael, Hot Rachel, are going to take down Everlasting, and now Rachel and Quinn are going to have to work together. And much to my shock, they kind of mostly deal with them in the opening scene. Now, obviously, that's not the very end of it. Like, he still tries to do more stuff. There's more drama that comes out of it. But the actual takedown, where they kind of like seize all of his stuff and security holds him up against the wall, and like Rachel plays her hand and says, yeah, I'm siding with Quinn, you're losing, we know you faked some of your documentary stuff, you paid off people to pretend to be sex slaves or whatever it was, and we'll tell everyone that if you tell anyone about us, so you're done. And I was surprised, and I was like, oh well, we're really wrapping this up already. I think I want to give this finale more credit though than season 1's finale, because I think that while it wrapped up some of that stuff very quickly, it felt like it felt to me that this finale had a lot more in the tank for afterwards, where it felt like the fallout of this and the way that game of chess played out between the characters of Coleman still wanting to try and take them down and now being more spiteful and vengeful about it. There was a lot more to sort of explore there, and I think that the end of the Everlasting season, if you will, where like who's he going to pick? Like who's he going to pick? How's it going to happen? And how is Quinn going to turn it into a travesty where like everything goes wrong? Like, she wants more heartbreak. She wants it to be a shit show. Her words exactly. And she tries to arrange as much drama as possible. She tries to arrange where both girls think they're going to be the chosen ones. She makes them both think they're going to get married on the show, not just proposed to, so she has them both bring in their families. And then she plans on exposing the fact that Chet and Tiffany have been having a little lovers tryst. That's not the right word. Anyway, like, you know, exposing that affair. And the whole plan is to convince Yael to be the one to like storm onto the stage and do it on live TV, no less. So there's a lot of stuff going on here, and it felt like it was paying off a lot more themes this finale to the rest of the season. And I think I really like a couple of things that have developed in the back half of this season that they've stuck to, and that is Darius and his cousin just not giving in to Rachel. When Rachel tries to talk to them this episode, they're just like, no, we're not listening to you. You got me shot. We're done. Get out. Like, they're like no tolerance. Like, you cannot manipulate them anymore. They're not going to listen to a word of it. Now, that's not to say that Darius still doesn't get surprised. Like, he doesn't know about the wedding thing either. He is shocked when he's on live TV and hears that he's about to actually have a wedding. And he's on live TV. What's he supposed to do? Start crying and yelling and saying, no, I didn't agree to this? So that puts him in a tough pickle, and that's something that also plays out. And the resolution to all that, which throughout the episode, you know, we see Jay feel very guilty about all these plans because he knows it's going to screw Darius over, and he's been trying to help Darius. He wants to help Darius. He wants it to be a positive thing, and feels really bummed out that they're doing everything they can to just make it a shit show that's going to make him look bad and leave him in a position where, like, you know, they think he's going to pick Tiffany, so he's going to pick Tiffany, get married, and then find out that she had just been having sex with one of the producers. That just all feels like, you know, malicious and mean-spirited, but I suppose that's not a surprise at this point on Unreal. But that's the plan. That obviously all gets thrown out the window for a couple of reasons. One, is because when Jeremy's brought back in by Coleman to try and help them expose everything as a witness, he actually goes to Rachel and tells her that Yael's a reporter and that she wants to expose everything, and she's going to use the live TV time to say things about the show. She's not going to say what they want her to say. And that makes Rachel back out of her getting on TV and makes her, go into a room of security and all the rest of it. The other thing that derails what the end of the Everlasting season was supposed to be is that Rachel kind of gets a bit of a conscience, and we've seen this happen a couple times throughout the show where something kind of prompts her to do something that's actually kind of good. And it's when she sees how much all of this is eating Jay up, where she kind of gets the idea of something else, right? Something she's not told Quinn about. Because Quinn and her are pretty tight this episode, for the most part. But the big thing is that when Darius is trying to pick between the two ladies to marry, and he feels very uncomfortable about this, he doesn't want to get married because he doesn't think it will feel like a real wedding, he wants that to mean something, and so on. So Ruby shows up, and the whole idea is that Ruby's the person that he actually had a connection with, that he actually wants to be with and date and potentially marry, and he does actually propose, to which, and I this was a pleasant surprise as well, actually, that Ruby said, "What? No, we've known each other for 5 weeks. How about we just start dating and see how we get on, and then maybe down the line we'll think about marriage." But it's still a happy ending. They kiss. Everyone is delighted, except, notably, Quinn, who looks furious and borderline emotional that she did not get her way. And I think that the big thing that stuck out to me here, more than anything, is Chet coming over to console her a little bit afterwards. He seemed quite happy with the result as well. And he's been making jokes that Quinn's doing all this because she's jealous after finding out about Tiffany and all that. But I think the obvious thing for the audience, for us to see here, is a big part of why Quinn's been especially vindictive here. It's not that out of character, don't get me wrong. This is the type of thing she does for drama. But it feels like her heart being set on making this all miserable for everyone, and that's the good car crash TV that she wants to do. I think in part is because she straight up doesn't believe in love right now, because of how things just ended in her own relationship, and I think she feels broken in some level by that, and there's this kind of added cynicism on top of all of her usual shtick, where she's looking at these characters and saying, no, love's not a real thing, so I'm not even going to pretend that we're going to have actual romance on the show. I'm going to make them miserable. And seeing something genuine play out where Ruby comes back, Darius is happy, and he immediately just ditches the other two and says, I want you instead, and they share a kiss. And the funny thing is that as she's getting upset and furiously looking at the monitors, I was thinking, this is actually still for your reality TV show, this is still kind of a good twist. This is still a surprise in the finale that feels like a big deal. It's just not the train wreck that you were hoping it would be. It almost feels contrived. And I'm not saying it's contrived and unreal for us, the real audience. I think it's fine in the context, because they set this up. They had Darius want to speak to her, they had Jago speak to her, and they did have chemistry. They did have chemistry back when she was on the show, and he was kind of, to an extent manipulated to kick her off the show. He was kind of convinced to do that, and all the pieces were there. For us, this makes sense. It does not. This feels well set up. But from a watching Everlasting in-universe perspective, this would almost be the contrived happy ending of we kicked her off, but she came back at the end for the big dramatic romantic ending, and so on and so on. And it was nice as well, because obviously the whole thing with the season 1 finale was that the proposed wedding did end up being a bit of a car crash, and Quinn was trying to basically double that with the two wives this time. So it was actually really nice that it went a more genuine, heartfelt direction, and it almost felt nice just because it felt like Darius deserved the win. Darius has been through hell this season, and he deserved to just have the happy ending after being sticked around. And even his cousin's this was a bad result because he's going to be poor, because he's not with the daughter of the owner of the football team, and all the opportunities that will bring him. And Jay's yeah, but you'll be happy. And that's maybe more important than being rich. Which I would like to believe as well. Although the modern world more and more is beating that idea into a pulp, but you know, it's something. So I really like this central thing and how it all worked out for the end of the romance of the show. I thought it used what it set up very well. I felt like because Darius was this character who wasn't like tied to Rachel, he was someone who was separate. Like, you know, because last season Adam and Rachel's the plot was a lot about are they attracted to each other? Are they going to get together? Are they going to run away together? Like there was a lot of plot with him and Rachel directly. But Rachel's plot this season was separate from the suitor, right? The suitor stuff was going on kind of independently from her plot. Obviously, she was constantly in that plot, but what I mean is that it wasn't personally attached to her story. So it felt more like Darius was a lot more of just an innocent victim who had been absolutely like put through the ringer with all of the bullshit that he's put up with this season. Just so much stuff to you know, make him mad, and that's why I was so happy that he never like gave Rachel an inch. He never like went back on his word and started listening to her again. He treated her like she was toxic and she needed to stay away, and that was it. I think that was a smart choice. I felt like the more realistic choice. So happy with that. Is good stuff. I also liked a little bit where they were going to have Madison go on instead of Yael. Like Quinn's like, get camera ready. You can go on and spill the gossip for the big dramatic ending, which never happened, of course. But there's a little joke here where Madison comes up and the current DP or camera assistant dude, he doesn't recognize that it's Madison. He's just like, you know, can I help you? And she's like, it's me. And he gets apologetic very quickly. But she looks so different with like, you know, the hair knot and the pigtails and whatever else. But fun little bit worth mentioning. So the other big thing, of course, and this is the thing that is going to bear some real discussion here, is kind of, I kind of summed it up before, but this idea of Jeremy switching sides to wanting to help Rachel. And a big part of that is when Coleman casually brings up Rachel's past about her childhood and what happened to her and why her mother was treating her with the assault. He never knew about that. And Jeremy clearly reacts to that in the moment. Coleman says something disgusting like, oh, you really dodged a bullet with that one, hey, buddy? And he's like, yeah, I guess. You know, he's clearly uncomfortable, and it does make him rethink maybe how he's, you know, how he views Rachel, how he's maybe treated her and gotten mad at her in the past. Not that this forgives like anything he's done or whatever, but just it seems like up until, you know, this season he's been like, she's the devil, she did all these bad things to me and I hate her and I'm going to do whatever I can to make her life miserable. It feels like he's actually got some empathy here, and that kind of leads to his decision. However, we do have to talk about how the show ends, because the big thing is that eventually, because they think they can keep Coleman at bay because he doesn't want to ruin his own reputation, and that very documentary he got all the awards for and the reason why he was hired for this show was faked. They think that'll keep him at bay. But once Rachel has discredited Yael, right? She says, hey, we'll just tell everyone she lied her way onto the show. No one will believe her. Jeremy's not on your side anymore. It's over. Coleman eventually just says, you know what? I'll just speak for myself. I'll just, you know what? I'll admit that I faked my documentary and I'll still take this place down to the ground. Like, I still, it's worth me ruining my own reputation to get back at this place and ruin you and Quinn and everything else. Like, he is getting ultra vindictive, where he's willing to throw himself under the bus for it. And it feels like, oh, that's it. What can we possibly do at this point? And Quinn tells Rachel to go fix it. She fails to do so. And when they're done with the finale, and, you know, Coleman's walked off all smug saying, enjoy your finale, it's going to be your last one, Rachel looks scared. And at the end of the finale, Quinn says, is that it then? Are we done? And it feels like they both think, this is it. We're done, and we might be going to jail even for what happened to Mary. Well, a little bit of a pivot here at the end. Mary died on set of the show. And of course, you know, I talked a lot about, and I think it makes sense to talk about the fact that there's guilt for her death because they effectively pushed her to that point. Now, they didn't push her off the roof. They didn't suggest that she even go on the roof. But they emotionally bullied and manipulated this woman so much that she eventually took her own life, and they are arguably very, very culpable for that. However, do you know what's more directly culpable? Do you know what's more directly falls under just murder? What Jeremy apparently does at the end of the show here, because we see Coleman and Yael driving down in his fast car down the road. And what's so funny is they're going down this winding road, there's trees on either side, and they're looking over each other, and they're speeding down the road. And I actually had the thought, bizarrely, and this is not me trying to say, oh, look at me, how smart I am, because I saw something coming. This, to me, is a sign that, like, visual telling language does exist. Because the way this little moment was filmed, this little sequence that was basically inside of a montage of them driving away down this road, made me think they were going to get into an accident. Right? The way it showed them driving down the road, the way they looked at each other, it made me feel like at any moment we were going to hear the tires screech, and that there was going to be a burning wreck, and they were going to die. And the only thing that could have given me that is how it was presented visually. Because my brain just went, oh, they're going to crash. And it's just purely how they showed me these few clips of them going down the road, just fired something in my brain. This is how it's been presented. It's in the same way where you're watching like a horror movie, and sometimes you know something's going to come out of the window in the background because they've framed the window just in such a way that it'll be perfectly there to be in shot when something comes through. It's kind of that, but in a less obvious way, right? It's a lot more subtle than that. But there's just something about the way it's presented that really made me go, oh, they're going to crash. What I did not expect was that Jeremy was going to come into the room and say, don't worry, we won't have to worry about them again. I told you I'd do anything. Cut to the cars in a ditch. There's medical and services and all sorts around them. They're dead. Jeremy seemingly cut the brakes or something to the car and has murdered 2 people. We have went from the guilt over someone killing themselves in season 1 to, oh no, someone just straight up committed a murder. A double murder at that in this season. And the final shot of this episode is our 4, I guess we'll call them the main characters, which is Quinn, Chet, Rachel, and Jeremy are all just lying out on the deck chairs, looking up at the sky, all just contemplating what's happened and what they've done. And it kind of feels like it's funny. I'm saying that I guess we're calling them the 4 main characters. I never really thought of Jeremy as like on the same level as the main 2 ladies, or even Chet to an extent, but Chet always had more, especially this season, than Jeremy did. But this kind of felt like this was solidifying who the 4 core like characters are. And you've got others who I don't expect are going anywhere. Like I think Jay and Madison will still be around, and Therapist Lady and whoever. But and the presenter, of course, who was just being spectacularly douchebaggy this episode with all of his vocal exercises and whatnot. But you know, because last season, you know, we had a lot of shots, or even at the start of this season, we had a lot of Quinn and Rachel on deck chairs looking up into the sky and talking. That was something in the finale last season. It's something I think we had again at the start of this season. So they're going back to that visual motif, that visual language of now all 4 of them are kind of partners in crime, at least in the sense that these 4 know what's happened, right? Jeremy's the one who did the thing, and they're probably going to get to do season, well, it's not this season 3 of Everlasting, it's like season 15 of Everlasting, but you know what I mean. They're going to get to do another season, but these 4 all know that 2 people were effectively murdered so that the show could keep going. And that Jeremy's the one that did it. I suspect that Jeremy's probably going to have his job back next season just purely because, well, let's keep him happy because he he killed 2 people for us, and we want to keep him on our good graces since he's capable of that, apparently. So, how do I feel about this though? That's the thing. Because I genuinely got to the end of this episode and didn't know how I felt about it, and it's not so much that. Because it's either great or terrible. I don't necessarily even mean it in that sense. but it does relatively come out of nowhere that he's done this. Like, it feels like such a leap that he's been willing to commit a murder when it's not something the characters have, they push people, yes, they make them shit themselves, they do this, they do that, and yes, and in one tragic circumstance it pushed someone to do something extreme, but they weren't pushing for that specifically. This felt like, oh no, someone is elevated to murder, and it felt like it did relatively jump up out of nowhere, and now we're left with this. I think in the moment when he said, "I told you I'd do anything," and we see the car wreck, I think I was leaning towards not liking it, bizarrely. But then when it showed the final shot of the 4 characters on the deck chairs, and now they're all kind of like in this little group who knows what happened and have to continue on knowing this, I flipped to liking it quite a bit. So I think what it's done and like the status quo it's leaving us on for getting into season 3, I think is really neat. And I think is interesting, and I think the fact that it is such a shocking jump that we can now play with next time is curious. How is Rachel going to be with Jeremy now, and especially now that he knows more about her past that she never told him, and what's going to go on with that. This idea that Chet even comes over to Quinn and says, "Hey, I will always be your family," and it didn't even feel like he was trying to get back in her panties there. It didn't feel like, oh, he's going. I'm sure he'll maybe still keep trying to do that, because it wouldn't surprise me, he's Chet. But it felt like in the moment he was saying that no matter what, no matter how many boyfriends you have or how many like young attractive women I managed to convince to sleep with me, like, we're family. And I guess that's the thing with this final moment is like, hey, we are this dysfunctional, really messed up family who looks out for each other even when one of us does something really bad. And that's kind of the vibe I was getting at the end of that shot, which is unique. It's a fairly unique way that we've built to this dynamic, and I'm curious to see how that goes on next season, which bizarrely I'm not actually going to get to right away. Board Now, who picks this show, is having me switch over to do a single season of another show before presumably coming back for season 3 of UnReal. Now, he could change his mind there as well, I don't know, but the plan right now is to switch to another show for, I think it's like 8 episodes, something like that. So which in a way is kind of nice. Like, I think having a break between season 2 and 3 and letting myself miss the characters a little bit, miss the thing, I think it'll be more exciting to come back to with a little bit of a break between seasons. So that's something that's worth keeping in mind. So that could be cool. But it does mean, it'll be much later in the year before I'm back to UnReal season 3. So but very good. I mean, I'm trying. Do I think season 2 is better than season 1? That's an interesting question. That's a very interesting. I think the finale's better, and I think that there's a lot of maybe more nuanced ideas that have come out because things are more developed. You know what? I think I will say season 2 is better than season 1. I think arguably some of the Rachel Quinn story I might have liked a touch more in season 1. But I think it's still very strong here, and it's got some really new directions, cool new directions that it's went in. But I think for me, one of the big things that I think has improved quite a bit this season is Chet's a good example. Chet is a character who, his romance with Quinn was never my favorite thing in season 1, right? And I think he was never my favorite part of the show. And even at the start of this season, when he went on his like spirit walk or whatever you want to call it, I thought some of that stuff at the start of the season was a little bit weak. I think once we got past that, I think he has been a little bit more interesting as a character. And the way he's interacted with Quinn since then, or even the others, has been a bit more enjoyable. In fact, shout out to framing, actually. The scene where Tiffany's telling him that she's going to actually marry Darius, and it's like a real marriage, she's not going to just dump him in like 6 months and go to Chet. Great shot of like him in the mirror, like in the reflection when she's telling him that, where they're both kind of in these separate like oval mirrors on the wall. It's just a really nice moment of framing. That's what I just thought of it because I was talking about Chet. So I think that's been better. I think Jay as a character is had a more interesting story this season because he's been a bit more invested in what's happening. him caring about Darius and caring about the outcome of having the first Black Suitor, I think has made him a lot more layered as a character. There was more going on there. And I think Madison's, mostly comic relief and should continue to be solid comic relief, so I have no complaints on there. So, yeah, I think I would say that season 2 is overall better than season 1. And I think that Darius is arguably a more interesting suitor than season 1. I guess the one thing that I think season 1 maybe did better is that, and maybe this was just part of the focus, is that I felt like I was more invested in the actual show Everlasting in season 1 of UnReal, where it felt like it focused more on like how they were actually like making the show. So I guess the actual like different tasks or different situations that we're putting them in were a little bit more interesting than this season, but this season had a lot more other things going on. So, the show's very good though. The show's got a lot of it's got a lot of nefarious kind of like characters or underpinnings of characters who are very, very fleshed out. They're not just cartoonishly evil. They have faults, they have dark sides, that we can start to maybe understand a little bit the more we learn about their past, and we can kind of sympathize with someone even when they have done something bad. And now, admittedly, cutting the brakes on a car and killing 2 people is going to be hard to sympathize with. It feels like Jeremy's a little bit off the deep end right now. But hey, maybe he'll go for a couple of runs, he'll get his job back, maybe he's going to be looking normal again next season. We'll find out, I guess. But so yeah, if you want to give me your thoughts on the season or this episode in the comments, please do. You can like, subscribe, all that stuff over or underneath on YouTube. You can support everything over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. I'm still kind of getting over being sick a little bit. I've had to like pause the video twice to have a coughing fit so far, so bear with me. But yes, thank you for joining me. I do appreciate it. Thanks to everyone who already does support the channels and everything. Go check out the movie channel, MailFuzz Movies, for all the movie podcasts. But that is me. So thank you once again for watching or listening. I do appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?